I thought Robert Tucker sang.
Not the way we do.
Well, you made my day yesterday when the famous local newspaper, The Beacon, arrived, and I found out that I was beloved. That was pretty heavy, I want to tell you. Well, that's good. So, here's what we have. When Judy first got in touch with me about this, I looked at the calendar and I said, Valentine's Day's coming up, why don't I do something on the general theme of love? And I've been working on this a long time, and therefore I have way too much material. But I'm going to, first of all, just, at Valentine's Day you give and you receive. That's a major part of the tradition. So first I just thought, and I want to go over some of these, and then I did some research and I got some more ideas. I mean, if you wonder, well, what am I going to do for Valentine's Day, or what might I receive on Valentine's Day? And here are a few. These are very traditional, and what I'm going to do after just noting some of these is do what I'm sure that Robert Tucker does, being that he and I are both PhDs from the Divinity School of Chicago, and we're neighbors for 4 years. Is you get a little historical. Who was Valentine? Where did this all come from? Candy, chocolate, stuff. So flowers, and the typical flowers, to give are roses, in particular roses of a certain hue, a reddish rose. Now, do you know the other flower associated with Valentine's Day? Violets. And I will explain that to you, and you will get it right away in a few minutes. Then I already mentioned the candy. When you are young and when you don't have much money and you don't eat sophisticated candy, Whitman's sampler is always there. But those luscious kinds of chocolates, and I'll tell you exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to get some strawberries that are dipped in chocolate for my 99-year-old mother. And I guarantee you it will make her day, because she loves chocolate and she loves strawberries. Candles, perfume. And then I saw an advertisement that I thought some of you may be interested in. It is a couple's getaway. And it is driving distance in Miami Beach. And it says, romance in the mind? Most hotels promote Valentine's Day packages with rose petals on the bed and chocolate-dipped strawberries on the nightstand. But Canyon Ranch Hotel and Spa in Miami Beach takes a therapist's approach to intimacy with a 3-day program devoted to sensuality and bond building. From February 12 to 14, that's this coming week, the resort will offer expert-led sensuality sessions covering sex and exercise, the role of testosterone in male neuroscience, and foods that stimulate the libido. The sessions are included in the 2-night couples intimacy experience, which bundles a couples therapy session, medical consultation, and a 125-minute couples spa treatment featuring a mud bath, body scrub, and massage from $1,200 a person. Of course, double occupancy. And then I knew this would happen. I knew that when this morning's New York Times came, that there would be something in there with regard to what to give or what to hope you receive. I'll tell you how I'm going to work that at my house. And an entire section of the New York Times today, page after page, of what kind of gifts to give. I note for you, Loving Thoughts Woodsaw Jigsaw Puzzle. At the age of some of us, that could be very attractive. And I'm quoting myself. A champagne truffle box. And what I particularly liked on the back is the artwork. 2 golden Mona Lisas by Andy Warhol. The Birth of Venus by Andy Warhol. A wedding invitation with a heart and 2 people below with arms around each other. And I really like this. Norman Rockwell. One of the joys of going to the Berkshires in Western Massachusetts was going to the Norman Rockwell Museum. And one of Rockwell's, if you have any, you can't visualize this, but one is after the prom with a couple, and she is in white, and he has on a white sport coat and a pink carnation. But the one that I really love is Rockwell's piece, Sunset. The 2 children with a hound dog sitting behind them. He has his arm around her. He's in farm overalls. She's got pigtails. And the sun is going down as they look into the sunset. I thought, that is really sweet. But there was more. Books. People give books. That's a pretty sophisticated thing to do, but I thought, this is a UU congregation. I could also do this at the Episcopal Church. The most educated groups in American religion. Yeah. All right. The editor of Modern Love column for the New York Times. Now, I'll tell you the truth, I don't usually read this column. In fact, I don't think I've ever read this column. But they have a regular column on modern love, and this gentleman has put together a book called Love Illuminated, Exploring Life's Most Mystifying Subject. And what he did was he asked readers of his column to submit electronically short vignettes about the ups and downs of relationships that involve love, and all relationships do. And so it is reviewed here in the Times. So the name of the book is Love Illuminated, not eliminated. And not to dwell boringly on this, but they have a whole section called Book Review, and the entire thing today is on love, and including the different varieties of love which were enunciated in terms of who's welcome in these confines. And I thought, I'm not going to mention Walmart, but it's all over Walmart. Well, one final suggestion. All right, some of you know that I'm Baptist. I continue to wonder what in the world that means this day and age. I've advised this to my students at Stetson when we did study of the Hebrew Scriptures, and it was February, and the 14th of February was coming up, and they don't have any money, so my suggestion all the time was go to a quiet, private, intimate place and read to each other from the Song of Solomon in the Hebrew Bible. Now, I would give you a sample, but I'm afraid it would be a little too risque for some. And not being an X-rated preacher or speaker, I am going to eschew reading from the Song of Solomon. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, this is about as explicit as it gets. And where in the heck, no, sorry. Where all these people got the idea that God's most saintly people were those who didn't have anything to do with romance, let alone would be appalled that this is in the Bible. And it's, by legend, associated with the smartest man in the Hebrew Bible. His short name was Saul, technically known as Solomon. So these are just some suggestions. And I thought to myself, you know, this is a fairly sophisticated congregation. They're going to want to know something serious about where all this come from. Well, it came from a saint, a Roman Catholic saint from the church that some of you escaped. And it's known as Valentine's Day, or the Feast of St. Valentine, and interestingly enough, it is not a feast day in the Roman Catholic Church in most places in the world. It's an optional. But where do you think it is? In their liturgical calendar. The Episcopal Church, the Lutheran Church, and the Eastern Orthodox Church, although because of the calendar, Orthodoxy does it in May instead of in February. So, how did this all begin? Well, it began with a guy named Valentinus, short, Valentine. He was a Christian in the pre-Constantine period, when the emperors of the Roman Empire didn't like Christianity. They said they were atheists and cannibals and other cool things to persecute them. And they were, to a certain extent. And so, the soldiers who were carrying out the law in the Roman Empire had to be single. You could not be a soldier in the Roman Empire in the pre-Constantine era, and during many of the emperors, and be married. And Valentine had a really smart idea. He was a Christian. He told any soldier that had a girlfriend and wanted to get married, he would do the marriage ceremony for them quietly and privately and on the side, and in the eyes of God it would be okay, regardless of the emperor. Well, the emperor found out about this and threw him in prison. And while he was in prison, Valentine fell in love with not the farmer's daughter, but the jailer's daughter. And when he was about, and 44 members of her household converted to Christianity. Now, so the guy's an evangelist. And so just before he is to be executed, he wrote her a very sweet note. I'm not going to see you anymore, you know, and so on. And he signed it, Your Valentine. And that's where we got that. Now, there are other legends associated with Valentine, but for centuries. I mean, we're talking this started in probably the 3rd or the 4th century, early 4th century. It's not until we get to Chaucer that the whole idea of romance and Valentine become associated. Now, just because of time, I won't go through some of the centuries we have to skip. But it became associated with Chaucer in the 14th century, and the image that he used in his poetry was the image of birds mating. And it's all about the birds mating, and it goes something like this. For this was on St. Valentine's Day. This is the Old English stuff, you know. When every bird cometh there to choose his mate. And of course, this is the sexist world of the bird being the male bird, choosing the female. And the poem was written to honor the first anniversary of the engagement of King Richard II, of course, of England, and Anne of Bohemia. Kind of a name. They were both 15 years old when they got married. They were following the biblical affirmation of it's better to marry than to burn with lust. That's in the Bible. Okay. Then we get to Shakespeare. Tomorrow is St. Valentine's Day. All in the morning betime, and I am made at your window to be your Valentine. Then up he rose, and donned his clothes, and doffed the chamber door. Let in the maid, that out a maid never departed more. Now, that doesn't sound as elevated as Shakespeare is, but he was down to earth on this. John Donne, the birds are chirping about, looking for a mate. The sparrow, the household bird, the blackbird, the goldfinch. The husband cock looks out, and sun is sped, and meets his wife, which brings her feather bed. And these things go on, and then we get down to Edmund Spenser in the 16th century. She bathed with roses red, the violets blue, and all the sweetest flowers that in the forest grew, which led within a century to the nursery rhyme that many of us know. The rose is red, the violets blue, and then they're all kind of real but the real one goes, the honey's sweet, and so are you. Thou art my love, and I am thine. I drew thee to my Valentine. The lot was cast, and then I drew, and fortune said, it should be you. Now, I would think quoting that to a beloved might be something to do. But then we get to the internet, and that really ramps things up. And sending cards. In terms of sending cards, if you count the cards exchanged in school among elementary children, usually, you're talking about 1 billion cards will be exchanged on Valentine's Day. This is a global event, and I want to just mention a few of the ways this is celebrated and will be celebrated this week by hundreds of millions of people from across the globe. In India, it is associated with the Lord of Love, Kama Deva, who is associated with the Kama Sutra. And in India, people who participate in this practice the intimate activities suggested and illustrated in the Kama Sutra. It is the Indian book of how to make love. I'm glad that children are gone. I wouldn't have been able to talk about this, that sort of thing. Now, in Korea and in Japan, it's chocolate all the way. If you are a working person in Japan, and I'm sure this isn't all of Japan, but on Valentine's Day, you are almost under obligation to bring chocolates for everybody you work with who is male. Everybody. And if you are a male in Japan and receive goodies on Valentine's Day, you are more or less responsible to return 2 to 3 times as much. This sounds a little bit like Wicca with the 3 times, kind of thing. And then finally, and I really like this, and this is leading to something I want to conclude with, which really broadens the significance of the Valentine's Day away from just the oohs and awe of falling on your knees because you can't stand because you're fall. In Latin America and in Finland, of all places, Valentine's Day is about Dia del Amor y la Amistad. Day of love and friendship. That, of course, is Spanish. Not done well. And it includes secret friends. Did you ever get a Valentine you didn't know where it came from? College professors are prone to get these, let me tell you. And this leads me to all of this mush that we associate with Valentine's Day is fun, it's real. I mean, it's a part of our bodily experience. Romance is just, it just drives you crazy. I mean, you're crazy in love. New Testament. Jesus has these guys. I'm sorry, they're all guys. There's nothing we can do about it. All these guys. And they hang out together for a couple of years. Almost 3 years. And they're a band of brothers. Very different personalities. Well, you remember the really bad experience of the guy who becomes the leader, who was in the courtyard, and they said, hey, you're one of his people. He said, no, I'm not. This is Peter's denial of Jesus 3 times. And he goes out, and what does he do? He doesn't commit suicide, which is an option sometimes when something like this happens, when you betray badly, but he weeps. And then a little later, Jesus gives a little talk to the disciples, and he takes Peter aside, and he says to Peter, do you love me? And Peter responds to him the first time and says, of course I love you. I'm your friend. Jesus says again, do you love me? He says, what's this? And he doesn't say that. He wouldn't have said that. This is God he's talking to, of course. He didn't know it at the time. Let me know. And Peter says, of course I love you. I'm your friend. And the third time, you don't get this in most of the biblical translations. Instead of saying a third time, Jesus does not say, does not ask, do you love me? Jesus asks him, are you my true friend? And Peter says, yes, I'm your true friend. On Wednesday, I finished teaching 3 hours in Daytona Beach at Rhodes Scholar, used to be Elder Hospital. I was teaching on spiritual responses to suffering in the world religions. Boy, has it been a treat to talk about Valentine's Day today after that. So I get home, and it's is what I do on, let's see, yeah, I taught on Wednesday. On Thursday, I went out to pick up the 2 recycle bins from the trash. And I pulled up and I saw neighbor Jim was in his pole barn. You know, you can build those without a permit. That's why most people do. And he's working on something, so I walked over. And he had a piece of heavy equipment, and he was showing me what it was. And okay, we chit-chatted with neighbors. And I said, well, I gotta get my trash out, or pick up the trash thing. So he began to walk with me. I just sensed something. So we got over to my truck. And I went over, he took one of the, these bins aren't big, but he walked over, picked up one, I picked up one. He says, I put Sadie down today. Sadie is his aged best friend, his dog. And he started telling me about it. He hadn't planned on it, but this and that, the other thing. Then he went to the death 2 years ago of his wife of age 58, who died of what I used to have. And I could see that this was really getting emotional. So this is my neighbor. this is my friend. And I'm talking to these people in Daytona about dealing with suffering and showing that you care. And this guy, Kerry's a big guy. This guy's bigger than Kerry. And I just went over to him, and I put my arm around him, and he turned and embraced me with both of his arms. And I said, hang in there. What you say is not what's important. But the solidarity of the community, of the togetherness, is what the basis of love is about. And if you fall in love, it's just fun better. And as we say, amen.